Welcome. It is too loud for me to talk over. It is Mysterious Forces Live. Thank you for being here on this Saturday night. I'm just waving a blue laser around like a fool. It is Saturday, July 13th, 2019. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to have a good time tonight. We're calling tonight Girls Night In. And I invited two lovely ladies, Bibi Tinsley and Kelly Farmer, to come on the show. We'll do another all-female panel again in the future, and hopefully we'll get more participants. We invited other people, but it was short notice, and they couldn't quite free themselves. So we'll give more notice next time and try to spread the love around. So welcome. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat room tonight. And let's see. I know that CW is going to be in the chat room and lots of other people. And I didn't want to just be a total tyrant tonight and dictate topics to my guests. So earlier in the day, I asked them each to just kind of bring one or two topics up. And that way, when they came to the show, they would bring some topics that they're interested into the table, and we would have a more equal conversation and get everybody interested. And I think a diversity of topics is in order. So first of all, I'll just go over a couple of topics that I wanted to throw out. And I think Bibi might have misunderstood me. I don't think I was perfectly clear in one of my messages. And one of my questions that we'll get to at some point is there a war against modern psychology and psychiatry? And what I mean by that, and maybe saying a war is a little bit of hyperbole on my part, but this pushback against science and logic and reason and things that are getting politicized that really shouldn't be politicized. And I think it's damaging to our society. And I think we hear a lot of the language, a lot of the gender study stuff, LGBTQ rights. Not that we're going to focus on that aspect of it. But, when we talk about aggression and therapy and being triggered and microaggressions and all this terminology, this is the language of therapy, of modern psychology. And there are certain political forces, and I would just say generally cultural forces, that take a very harsh view towards that. And there's a lot of name calling and a lot of meanness that's happening in our society right now. And there seems to be this divide between people who are trying to embrace more sensitivity and more inclusiveness, and then another camp who's, it would appear on the surface, that their hearts are more hardened, and they're all about personal responsibility and not feeling so charitable towards their fellow citizens. So I thought we would just address that, not in a very specific political way, but in more of a cultural way. Are we experiencing a cultural pushback against science and psychology, and a more sensitive, and I would even suggest maybe a more feminine viewpoint of how to govern, how to lead, and how that might carry us into the future and replace a lot of the patriarchal archetypes that have been in place for so long and seem to be dysfunctional, in my opinion. Something else I want to throw out, I'll get into the details. I saw this thing earlier today and it kind of caught me by surprise. And it happened back in 2018. It was a third quarter recap for 2018 for Catherine Austin Fitz on her Solari.com and the Solari report. And the title of the video was Third Quarter 2018 Wrap Up, News, Trends, and Stories, Part 2. And I'm just going to paraphrase this. I have it written down. But Catherine Austin Fitz suggested that the real agenda behind creating a third gender, like a gender fluid, gender or a gender X on driver's licenses and on birth certificates is because it would allow legislatures of the future to, instead of trying to make humans conform to a more AI based society where there might be automation and robots, that they will bring robots into the human arena and register them like humans. And therefore, they would enter the economic system. They would pay taxes. They would hold jobs. They would be accountable by some kind of, I suppose, social security number. And I don't know. I have issue with some of that, I think, and I'll talk about that later. But I don't know. I couldn't really believe that Catherine Austin Fitts put that out there. But we'll hash it over if we get to it. I consider what Bibi and Kelly brought to the table to take precedence over my questions. What Kelly brought, and I'm just paraphrasing very briefly, why the alternative research community is more open to less popular religions and mythologies and belief systems. And she also mentioning the 1999 nostalgia loop time travel experiment. And Kelly also wanted to put out there, are psychics real? And does it really matter if they're real or not? And even if they are not real, do they still serve a positive role in our culture and society as a form of therapy or counseling, even if the actual psychic ability is not present? So those are Kelly's topics. And then Bibi, she got really deep. What constitutes a true community? Does our community, meaning the alternative research, all of us, whether it's nuts and bolts or the woo-woo side, does our community reflect the chaos and the turbulence that we're seeing in our macro culture, in culture writ large? Is this divisiveness within the community a reflection or a symptom of that larger problem? And I think kind of broadly, she wanted to talk about energy, maybe. She said there's so much energy out there and so much energy at work right now, and all of these tidal forces pushing and pulling against each other. And so I kind of, once again, paraphrasing, just kind of assumed that meant that we'll talk about energy and how it might be affecting all of us. So that's what Kelly and Bibi brought to the table. Like I said, my questions will go to the back burner. I'm going to give priority to the guests. And so without any further ado, Bibi Tinsley and Kelly, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's fun and wonderful to be here, Natasha. Hi, Kelly.
Hi, Bibi. Hi, Natasha. Thanks so much for inviting me on. I'm very excited for tonight. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. I'm really excited too. And I'm excited to have an all-female panel and kind of get a different take on some things. And I will be looking in the chat room. I see Dave. I see Sherry CW, Philip Blair, Lisa Gray, Jonaside, Steve Ronan, Omar Corona. I see a lot of people. So we'll be, if questions develop within the live chat over the course of the conversation, we'll incorporate that as well because we love audience participation. So, Kelly,
yes.
What brought this question to your mind of the alternative research community being more open to more obscure, less popular religious belief or mythologies?
Well, I mean, that's not to discount, the large percentage of people in the community that, do follow more popular and more traditional religions and belief systems. But really, I do notice that there does seem to be a larger proportion versus, the general population that do follow things. Like, for example, Jonaside, who is in the live chat right now, he follows the Norse gods. And it's not really common that you hear people modernly that follow the Norse gods, especially in the United States. In addition, there's a lot of people that did not grow up Hindu within our community that do follow the Hindu mythology and the Hindu gods. So I just find it fascinating that it seems like with regards to spirituality and with regards to ufology, depending on what, aspect of this you focus on, there still seems to be a larger proportion of the group that do follow and do believe these more, I guess, in the, like I was saying, in the general population, smaller percentages are larger here. And I just find that interesting. And I wanted to kind of know what you guys think. Because, you know, like Davey is saying, he's a druid. There are quite a few people that feel that they're pagan or druid or all sorts of things. So what do you guys think?
Well, I'll tell you, we have this thing that came into our reality, in the 90s. It's the internet. So what has happened, it's made all of these ideas that one used to have to go to the library and go to the bookstores readily available. People have gotten together in groups and communities, so this whole thing has mushroomed. And I think that's one of the factors going into people are just being exposed to so much more than they ever have before. And it's interesting, as you were explaining that, Kelly, it occurred to me, it goes to my interest in the overall connection of cultures coming together, crisscrossing, melting, merging, disappearing, dissolving, et cetera, et cetera. What the heck is going on? But that's not to say that I don't support open-mindedness and people being given the opportunity and the chance to really connect with something that they feel in their heart that these times are making available right now. So that's a really, really good thing. There's a lot of other stuff that's not so good in it, but that's actually not part of this conversation. That's what I do. Can't help it.
My perspective on this would be that I think traditional religions probably, there's a large segment of people that traditional religions aren't answering that inner call that they have or fulfilling that inner need for some kind of connectivity or connection to spirituality and also community, because I think that a spiritual belief system, whatever it is, kind of automatically comes along with a culture and a community. Sometimes it's small, even if it's a solo pagan practitioner, there's still a larger community available out there online if a person chooses to reach out. So that community is always available. And I think that it's kind of like, not to be trite, but birds of a feather flock together. I think people who aren't fulfilled by those traditional belief systems they're just searching for something else. And so they're already coming to the topic or to this world with their minds open, searching and holding their possibilities open for other ways of thinking, other ways of being, and not just so willing to believe something just because someone says that it's true or because you grew up, going to church. Think that it's, I really think it's kind of like our cultural evolution in that we're probably moving away from these Judeo-Christian, Muslim, desert religions, more traditional forms of being, because I think, we can discuss, but I think that a lot of the founding principles of those religions are not really answering the modern problem, and they're not addressing what's going on in the modern person's heart. And I think that's a lot of what's going on with this larger political and culture war, is that you have these forces of tradition that want to hold on to the status quo and keep things the way that they have been, where, obviously privilege comes to some people and disadvantage comes to others through that system. And the demographics of the population is changing. People's needs are changing. And I think a lot of this anger and frustration from these people is because they feel threatened by the loss of this lifestyle of their belief system. And, people have invested so much of their own personal identity into that narrative that if something comes along and threatens that narrative, or even suggests that that narrative may be incorrect, then they have to suddenly start looking within themselves and question who they are, what they believe in, the foundational principles of all that. So I think it's very challenging for people who are trying to hold on to, some sense of tradition, probably motivated by a sense of comfort.
Oh, sure.
And,
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be long-winded about that, but
no,
that would be my take.
What you were saying makes me think of how, this is the age-old story of the younger generations coming up and the conservative, Saturnian, kind of Capricornish energy of the staunch person who holds the line in the sand with the traditions. This is always going on in our human story, but the difference is there's more like a tsunami, an avalanche of information and ideas and energies that are, I think, have stirred up so much that it's just stirred up too much in too short a time, and we're dealing with that. It's all going to settle down. I really do feel that, but absolutely. In the olden days, before TV, before radio, let alone the internet, you had books being sent by, this is after, printing came into being. People got their hands, those who could read, it would take weeks for a publication to arrive somewhere. So the movement of information and ideas was much more languid. And now it's mind-boggling. It really is. And it's disturbing and exciting. And, one could go into so many different places. But getting back to Kelly's observation that our alternative community really, really seems to be more open-minded. Is that it? Would you say? I guess that's the quality that I see.
Yeah, and I think that that's really at the core of what it is. It's the fact that they already are starting out as more open-minded and more interested in these types of things. So therefore, they're more open-minded to these less traditional religions that aren't the Abrahamic religions.
Right. Yeah. I see. That's only a good thing in my book.
Well, and then here's another question, just like a little side note to it. Do you think that the popularity of ancient aliens and that whole ancient astronaut theory has actually increased people's open-mindedness to that since they go back to these other religions as evidence, so people are more exposed to it? What are so that's just a little side question.
I would say yes. I mean, I had a guilty pleasure back in 2010, and that was watching Ancient Aliens. I didn't want to tell anybody because I was embarrassed, However, now, as I watch and I go to conferences and I meet people who are so excited and coming into these new ideas, oh, wow. I think it's serving a very good purpose. So I'm definitely not going to say anything negative about, and there's some wonderful people who go into producing that show anyway. So lots of good information.
Even though I would have critiques of the overall cultural meaning of those shows, I think I'm agreeing with Bibi. I think that anything that propels people forward and opens their mind toward something new, I think is positive, even if that happens in increments. And, look at us. I mean, as a culture, when National Geographic has something huge come along, we all stop and take notice. And we're all, I'd say as a culture, we never fail to be fascinated by ancient Egypt or Mayans or ancient Chinese civilization. All of these different perspectives and the rich ancient history of Hinduism and, the Bhagavad Gita. And it's just, I think that it calls to something deep within us, deep in our psychology, and I think it's probably part of our DNA. Some of that response to
I
those
was just
concepts.
thinking that, Natasha. Yes, I agree. It's just a strong pull that I
No,
feel. Yeah.
Yes. Kelly, did you have anything else to add to that?
Not on that topic. We can move on to another one.
Okay. We'll mix it up a little bit here, and we'll go to Bibi's topic. What constitutes a true community? And does our community reflect the chaos and turbulence that we see in the outer culture, this apparent schism that's going on right now?
It's a really honest question. I'm not sure what constitutes a true community. You have, well, I think of a community as a group of folks who have definitely shared interests, be they cultural, academic, religious, business, people who come together who are share something in common. And I asked the question because I have been really stymied since 2017. I felt like I'd been hit over the head by a 2x4 after I went to Contact in the Desert. This was in 2017. I was kind of naive. I admit it. I was a real innocent, and people. I had been so excited about the world of metaphysical, deeply learned people coming together with deeply learned scientists and engineers. And I just, I really got over the top excited about it. And then Armageddon hit. It's been a very nasty time of backbiting and mean words, and maybe it's necessary. Maybe this kind of thing is happening due to lyric currents. Who knows? Or the moon, astrological reasons, where we are in the cosmos, where our planet is moving through. There's been a lot of talk about the extra cosmic waves that we're being bombarded with, and how things are accelerated. So many factors. But then again, here we are in this community. And I love the idea of being in this community. I'm meeting really, really good people. I would say really authentic people. And then on the other hand, I'll turn on a YouTube and I'll see it's like watching the Jerry Springer show, I guess you have to have a sense of humor. But anyway, I really want to know what this community is all about. And I would like to think that there's room for somebody like me. I'm deep woo-woo, guys. There's nobody going to get more deep woo than Bibi, okay?
Deep woo.
Yes.
I like that.
I also love science and logic and discriminatory writing and thought and philosophy. So this is where I see if we can all share our ideas with respect and let the other person speak who you do not agree with at all, just let them speak. I think there's hope. But if it continues in this vein, I don't know. And then again, maybe it is necessary. I don't know. So I'm asking you, ladies, what do you think about the community, where we're at, how we got here, and where we're headed?
Ms. Farmer?
Well, I mean, for me, really, so going back to the original part of your question with regards to what really makes a community anyway. And really, for me, that's, as you mentioned, people having shared interests. And it's also what makes it into a community, though, is when people start interacting with each other and sharing their ideas. So with regards to our community and everything that's going on with the politics, I think that the issue lies in not necessarily disagreement, but it lies in the fact that I think some people are protective of what they're perceiving the community to be.
Mm.
And they want to protect that from other individuals who may be threatening, that they see as threatening the community. So it's not that they disagree with their ideas, but it's more along the lines of they disagree with the approach and anything that they perceive as trying to deceive everybody. They don't want, it's really a fight against deception within the community. That's the way I see it, and I think that's where the schism is coming from.
I would second that motion in my own way, and part of the reason is there's an iconoclastic element going on here. Old symbols and old tropes, old ways of thinking are being torn down, and I think the great democratization of the internet is allowing that to happen, because we've had some people who have had unfettered access to mass media. Whether it's national radio programs like Coast to Coast AM, other shows, appearances on television, or Gaia TV having their own network that specializes in those kinds of topics. And they've enjoyed a certain amount of success, both financial and probably personal in terms of ego. And that's probably a pretty comfortable position. But the internet has leveled the playing field, and that someone such as myself suddenly has a voice. CW, dark journalist, Joe from the Carolinas, people who want to question, once again, the status quo. And I think the reason it gets so heated and so divisive is because people are very passionate, and they don't, and I think it's about the truth. And I think it's about telling the truth, and it's about transparency and accountability. And if you get to a point where you're, and I'm not going to dig into specifics, and I think we all knew who I'm talking about, but I just don't want to go there. I want to kind of keep the conversation above that. But if you see someone who's obviously telling a lie, who's obviously manipulating people, who is then enriching themselves either socially or financially, from that level of deception, or at least kind of maybe a cynical attempt at getting notoriety, or playing on a community, people start to get angry. And we don't have to rely on these traditional media outlets. And now that we can, if you can get a camera and get a microphone and, kind of get your act together, anyone can have a show. Anyone can start doing this and start giving their opinion. Anyone can start commenting. And I think people are angry. And I have to speak for myself. I've been one of the people who have said ugly words, who have said very pointed things about people, who have come right out and called people a liar, looked right in the camera and said, "You're a liar." The reason I get so mad is not because I want the truth. Because when people tell ridiculous lies, when people manipulate and enrich themselves at the expense of other people, I think it makes the whole community look bad. I think it pulls everyone down. But at the same time, even I'll just speak for myself. I'm not the world police of the alternative research scene, right? Like I never set out to make it my mission to save this community from the liars. But at the same time, when you see liars, or someone you perceive to be a liar, with a bully pulpit, and they go unchallenged, then it really leads to this impulse to want to just tear them down, to be an iconoclast and tear down those old systems and ideas and expose that for what it is. But people get uncomfortable because there are a lot of people who take comfort in that kind of fantasist narrative. Once again, they get comfortable with a narrative that fits in with their life really well, and their philosophy and their ideology. And when people start deriving comfort from that belief system, once again, much like the Abrahamic religions, as you so well phrased it, Kelly. You start to challenge that, and people get really uncomfortable. They get angry, and passions get brought up. So how do we push our way through to finding some kind of truth as a community? How can we have room for the woo-woo part of this?
Mhm.
And how can we talk about energy and energy healing and treat those subjects with the seriousness that they deserve and the open-minded point of view that it is possible for these things to be interacting with us in our world, but also have some kind of adherence to logic and reason and scientific principles so that we don't just completely fall down the rabbit hole of nonsense. And,
That's it right there. I'm
No.
sorry to interrupt you. Yeah.
No.
What you were just laying out, Natasha, I see those actions as you're being a fierce protector of people who were unable to see what was going on. Now, there's a certain point where people have to take responsibility for believing or not believing something. I was one of those people who took comfort in a fantasy. However, as soon as I recognized the untruth, I was appalled. I was angered. I was very sad, and I was scared. I was scared at what people could do. But it was because of people like Natasha and people like CW that I was able to wake up to the ethical injustice that was going on. And, Natasha, the bottom line is, in a community, getting back to what makes a community, I think it's absolutely important for, if we see somebody acting in an unethical way, in a way that is harming others, it's a duty to speak up. So nobody was doing that for the longest time, and it mushroomed into this thing, and we're dealing with that now. So in answer to your question of how, it really helped me listening to what you were just saying, Natasha, because these things do take time. It's kind of a phenomenon, and there was a lot of spontaneity in the anger that was erupting. It was very emotional. Feedback. But there's almost a comfort with understanding that it is perfectly fine. Not only perfectly fine, but necessary to demand authenticity and not impeccability. There's a word, I can't think of it right now. Kelly, help me out. When somebody is an upstanding person who, will not do anything low to others. And if we see behavior like that, we have to call it out. Integrity.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yes, integrity. Right. And then it's a matter of everybody also getting comfortable with so many factors involved here. So many factors on a personal level, a spiritual level, being comfortable with ourselves, not being threatened, growing up emotionally. And we're doing it together here.
I mean, with regards to what both of you are saying, I think that we do have a way out of this, and we're kind of moving in that direction in a good way. And that's, we're moving away from having, as we should, by the way, from having these quote unquote celebrities that everyone is believing every word that comes out of their mouth, and their word is what the belief system is. The fact is that the only way for us to actually get to the quote unquote truth, to find these answers that we want, are for all of us to come together and give different input from different places.
You're here.
It's all about, really, and that's always been my point of view, that really it's about, coming together and getting these different ideas, because everyone, maybe not everyone, but a lot of people is a better way to put it, their thoughts and ideas are based on some sort of truth. So if you can find that truth in every person's story and what they're saying, then together, if you put those together, you might find the truth. But that's just my opinion. And I think that YouTube, with the advent of this and people being able to go online very easily and just come up and put on a show and speak their truth, I think that's helping rather than harming, because we're able to hear more voices. That's
Absolutely. It breaks the I wanted to say moratorium. It breaks the monopoly on disseminating information that I'm not picking on Coast to Coast necessarily. I don't want anyone to think that, but they're the example that comes to mind because that's an internationally broadcast radio show 7 days a week, worldwide, with a massive audience. And you know, I've been critical of the content on there before, but I'm just saying, you know, they all had a monopoly on this. And Ancient Aliens, you know, suddenly there is that celebrity aspect. Just because someone is giving their take on a given case or a topic in between segments, because their face is seen on television, suddenly they have this cachet that helps them out. Because we as a society, if you put a microphone in someone's hand, and especially if you put a camera in front of them, we automatically, in some weird level of authority to that person. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about television that so captivated our psyches that made us look at it as this like authoritarian kind of thing, that only the truth comes out of television. That only the truth. We're all learning differently now, right? But when we were kids, it was that way. And it was certainly that way for our parents. So we're breaking away from that. I'm not saying we're still stuck in that, but this is part of that process of breaking out of that.
That wasn't that long ago, Natasha. That was not that long ago. I mean, there is so much happening to us here in the West. Particularly, I'm familiar with America per se, you know, and this is not everything there is. But yeah, if you look at what our grandparents were doing and what we're doing with connecting online right now, that was only a few generations ago. It's so fast. My dog is going crazy. Speaking of energy, excuse me 1 second. I have to let her in. Hang on. I'll be right back.
I've wondered if I was going to have to do it. She's doing it right now. Kelly, do you think that? Do you think one of the short answers on this is just the democracy of the internet, the access?
Yes, and I think that's one of the answers, and I think that's a good thing. I know, as I mentioned, I think some people don't think it's a good thing, but I think that it is, because I think, as I said, that a lot of people have some good interpretations and some good analysis on things that haven't been heard. Some of them still aren't being heard, but I think that it's starting to increase, and I think that's a good thing.
I think sunshine and transparency is good. It stops mold from growing.
Yeah.
So yes, well put.
Be broad on this topic. This energy that you referred to, this kind of chaotic energy, something that occurred to me while both of you were talking was that you take an organization like Catholicism who has a leader, perfectly defined leader, the Pope, okay? But if you go around the world to different countries and different parishes and different churches and even different cliques within an individual church, you're going to have even still widely diverse opinions and interpretations of what Catholicism is, or some of the principles of Catholicism. There's still room for different interpretations there. There is no leader in the alternative research world, thank God, nor should there be. And I think we kind of, depending on what your point of view is or what your biases are, kind of select them for ourselves. And do you think that part of this chaotic energy is because in a certain sense right now, this is like anarchy? Like there are no rules, there's no one in charge, we're learning how to police ourselves. So, and once again, I don't want to I don't want to cross the line into hypocrisy. I've said some very pointed, mean things. I don't want to pretend like I haven't. But do you think it's easy to cheap shots at people because of the internet? Because I'm just going to be straight up. CW has said some harsh things, but I'll tell you what, some of the harshest things he has said were the things that had me rolling in my seat at home laughing out loud. You know, because it's entertainment. Some of this is entertainment. It's like truth and entertainment. It's like what the Daily Show was with Jon Stewart, where you don't know whether to laugh or cry. It's like, yeah, this is kind of pathetic and it's kind of true and it's sad, but at the same time, couch this information or a critique in a funny way, where you're also entertained by whatever's being talked about. Do you think we're just still sorting that out for ourselves, and it's anarchy right now, and as a community we're still figuring out how to manage ourselves?
Speaking of energetics right now, you were really going in and out there, but I was able to make out what you said, Natasha, and I can speak to that. Yeah, I think it's everything that you said. And I know CW is listening to this right now, and I don't want this to go to your head, CW. But
too late.
And it's okay if it does, because we need people like you. You are a sacred truth teller in the ancient tradition of sacred truth tellers. The truth tellers were the jesters. The truth tellers are the ones who make you laugh while you're absorbing and integrating all of the pain of the truth that they're pointing out to you. So this is necessary. And in some ways, you know, Natasha, you have that bent in you as well, because you are effing funny, even when you're dealing with some very, very, very deep, serious stuff. So this is one of the things I love about people waking up and knowing it's okay to, hey kids, let's put on a show. Let's get a chat room together, and I'm going to start telling some jokes and telling you where the F everything is, right? So we've got that going. We've got people waking up psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, physically, deciding what constitutes a human being, you know, the whole AI. There's so much. It's like, there's so much going on right now, and we're holding it. Mm-hmm. We are holding it. I'm proud of us, guys.
Your thoughts on that? Yes. Your thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, with regards to, I mean, you specifically called out CW Chanter, so we'll continue talking about him.
Oh, he hates that.
He, as Bibi was saying, the thing is that a lot of the things, I would say the majority of things, in my opinion, that he's saying are true. His critiques are not off base. I mean, I think that debatably, sometimes his delivery can be harsh, but sometimes you need like the stone cold truth.
Absolutely.
To be brought up to you.
Yeah.
If you kind of, you know, dance around it, then people may not pick up on it. So sometimes you do have to deliver it in that way. And I think he's doing a great service. And that's why people really enjoy his show.
Absolutely. That is the job of an icon, is to do that very thing, to tear down those sacred structures and say, you know, what is this? And what are you doing? Yeah. And I don't like focus on them necessarily either. I think there are a lot of people doing that kind of work in this community, and I'm hoping that we can. I don't know. You think that this is going to be a matter of attrition? That the people, let's say that there are people within the community who overall, at least as we see it, are problematic. Do you think that they will take care of themselves and disappear, fade away, and walk away at this, you know, because this light of this criticism and watching people say and fact checking people in a way that was not possible 10 years ago, you can go back and look at the history of what someone said. So real accountability is at hand, as long as there are people who are willing to do the research to make sure that the accountability is accurate and honest. Do you think people will just take care of themselves, and that's going to work its way out, and this will get a little more homogenous, at least a little more harmonious between the woo-woo people and the experiencers and those who... I think nuts and bolts really only applies to ufology. There really isn't there is kind of a nuts and bolts to the paranormal in terms of paranormal investigations, things like that. When it comes down to experiences like consciousness, remote viewing, and psychics, those are subjective experiences, and I think for now, obviously, they're beyond the reach of science.
They're starting to be measured, though. People like Dean Radin are bona fide, repeatable experiments, like the slit experiment that he has demonstrated. This is the stuff that really gets me going. That's the kind of science that I love. And you know what? I'm kind of all over the place. I'm really excited to be sitting here having this conversation because it's blowing my mind. I realize, Natasha and Kelly, I am like I have interest in all of that. I don't like the hardcore ufology history stuff. I just find it, people just get into fisticuffs over it. And I think we should just move on. But there's the science, the consciousness, the studies in psychology, the studies in spirituality, and the stuff that is becoming, like you had those scientists, this really cool physicist, Natasha, on your show. He was talking about, yes.
And buddy?
Yes, that's the kind of stuff that really gets my motor going. And this is where it's all going to come together. And I think it's going to be some years before it settles out truly. People need to just grow up a bit. We're also damn immature. Sorry, but we are.
No,
and that's
true.
part of it. That's part of it. Just being respectful and kind.
Oh, absolutely. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to step on you.
That's okay.
Kelly, does this segue easily to our psychic school? And does it matter either way if they're real? Do they still serve a positive benefit to society even if they're not real? I'll tell you what, I was excited by that question. It really kind of caught me off guard. I hadn't quite framed it for myself that way before, so it just you asking the question, putting that out there, kind of made me think of it differently. We run with this for a little bit and talk about whether we think they're real or not, and whether they have a benefit.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. So I brought up this question because, I personally do believe that the majority of people actually have, some intuitive abilities. It's within. I'm one of those people. I'm pretty woo-woo too, if people haven't figured that out. That's why me and Bibi get along so well. It's that I do actually believe in people and their psychic abilities, and I believe that a lot of people have intuitive abilities. So really, do I necessarily believe that, that you can go to someone and they can tell you your whole future, can tell you everything that you're supposed to be doing? And the answer to that is, I don't know that someone has that ability to necessarily give you exact information. And a lot of times they'll say, well, I'm just giving you one version, which is also a good way to look at it because they're just giving you an opportunity. But really, with the second part of the question where I said, but does it really matter? And to me, the answer is no, it does not actually matter. Because I think that by a lot of psychics now actually actually refer to themselves more along the lines of intuitive counselor rather than a psychic. And I think that if you look at it from that perspective, you can kind of see the positive role that they can play in people's lives, because people are able to then really understand their own intuition and really get confirmation and kind of counseling in kind of more of a psychological standpoint. It's almost like talking to a therapist to a degree about these things and these issues going on in their lives and how they can resolve them. So I do think that in that aspect, that quote unquote psychics are playing that role, a positive role within the community. So that's why I brought it up. I thought it was interesting.
It's a great concept. Bibi, what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, Bibi's muted.
We can't hear you.
Can you hear
there
me
you are.
now? I forgot. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Yeah, I love this. Yes, I definitely, in my own subjective experience, I know that these things exist in my reality. I'm not about to try to convince somebody who doesn't believe that it does. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. And what you were saying about the benefit of how it can help people, I think that the old system of fortune telling does not help. And what is really productive is showing a person how to look at the energies, if you will, in their life, like a fantastic tarot reading. It doesn't matter what the cards are. They're there, in my opinion, to show a pictorial, it's a pictorial representation symbolically of what universe, spirit, your higher self, what, I don't use those terms, but I know people relate to that. You know, yeah, and I agree, Kelly, it is like going to a therapist. It can be. And it's a real service. If somebody is adept at interpreting the cards in a way that is uplifting and compassionate and skilled, I think that the client can benefit enormously, because it's sort of a teacher healer more than just a fortune teller looking into the future, which I never, it's not that I didn't believe it. I cringed from it. I was a little repelled by fortune telling itself for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm. I've always, I'm not getting off topic, but I've always cringed whenever there's been an intersection between spiritual belief and experience and money, even on a very basic level. And when those two things start to come into contact with each other, it's always kind of created a conflict for me, because I've always thought that spirituality and consciousness, however an individual defines it for themselves, has absolutely nothing with money. So when you get the exchange of money involved in that process, then that kind of at least opens doors to maybe not the best motivations for why a certain person might get involved. And I'm not talking about who we were talking about earlier, right? Like for instance, years ago, I was in an Edgar Cayce study group. And so you're buying the Edgar Cayce books, study material, and we were meeting once a week, and we're talking about these topics and taking some of the stuff home and doing like this homework. And I don't know, after a while, you know, it was like cool. It was good to have a sense of community. But at the same time, then it started, you know, I introduced someone that was in my family that I looked up to, that was in spirituality and this kind of thing. And when I talked to him and I took him, as soon as it was over, he came out and he was talking about the guy who was doing it. And he goes, "What's he getting out of this?" And I had myself that question: "What's he getting out of this?" And you know, so it was, you know, it took an older person than myself, someone I respected, to just ask that really bluntly. And I had to look at the whole thing a different way all of a sudden. And then, you know, you realize that, you know, the Edgar Cayce Foundation was, you know, encouraging these groups to organize, but that also meant that they were selling these kits and these books, and that there was money going into the national headquarters, and it was all, you know, and then philosophically, you know, not aside from the veracity part of it, I don't have a problem with the philosophy of what Edgar Cayce was saying. I was fascinated. I think there's some fascinating stuff that came out of the Edgar Cayce sessions. Fascinating doesn't mean true, but I was involved in something like that. So
That's cool.
I think that the shaman, the wise woman, the healer, the odd character, and the contrarian in Native American culture. There were contrarians. I don't know if many people know this. Not only were there multiple genders and twin spirits, not making it about that, but there were contrarians who wore their clothes
Right. I forgot about that. Yeah.
at all times, just to introduce some kind of weird. They were the iconoclasts. They were breaking the mold of people's perceptions of what a person can do be on a given day, and those are reality changers. Those kinds of people. So I think there's always been a role in societies, small and large, for. And I would have to weigh in on the side of it being, as long as there's no real financial exploitation going on, I think it's for the better. And I come at this person that I was way into philosophy very early on, and I really believed in the hardcore metaphysical stuff, reincarnation, karma, all of that stuff. That was my belief system. I'd gotten more skeptical and leaning toward atheism as I've gone along. And I would probably be completely an atheist if it wasn't for the fact that I've had a close Bigfoot sighting, which breaks the mold of my reality. Okay, so I've had a very up close Bigfoot sighting, which cannot be mistaken for something else. Okay, so that reality presented something to me. I've had a variety of consciousness experiences, which leads me to believe that there is certainly something more to human consciousness than what science can describe or quantify. And it's experiences that keep me hanging on to that part of the woo myself, because I've had those experiences. And if I went completely to the atheist side and said that that's all bunk, that would be a lie, because I would be denying my own direct experiences.
Right.
So I'm left sorting out what my own direct subjective experiences teach me, what they inform me, versus logic and reason of a system outside of me, and how to make this work with each other. So, I want to be into the science of it, but in my heart of hearts, at the end of the day, I can't deny that there is some element of this to consciousness and to the universe. I mean, how many people have followed their intuition and done or not done something, and had they taken the other action, would have been a car wreck or disaster in some fashion? It happens all the time, every day. Someone is altering the course of their trajectory, and it has an impact on their life. And I don't know. I know that that's unscientific. That's but we all know about it. We've all experienced that, or someone who has. All of us. One of them hadn't had experience like that. Sorry, I talk. It's my show, and I'm talking way too long.
You're so funny.
I don't mean to pontificate. I really want to be what you guys.
Actually, what you're saying, Natasha, is ringing so true, and it's through conversations like this where we can share our own experiences, and it's such an individual thing. Belief. I don't believe in belief. I put my energy, if you will, into something that I have experienced. And even if I trust somebody really, really well, a loved one that I've known all my life, I'm still not going to believe their experience because they're telling it to me. I will respect it. And, I think there are as many different realities as there are individuals. Just put that into your pipe and smoke it. And I want to hear, what were you going to say, Kelly?
No, I like that, Bibi.
Thank you.
What I was going to say with regards to kind of what Natasha was bringing up, that like pulls it back to what I had originally said in the beginning of that in my personal opinion, everyone has innate intuitive abilities. I mean, the difference is that some people choose to tap into it and develop it more than others. But within everybody, I believe that everyone has it. The only other point I wanted to make, and then you can continue, Bibi, what you were going on, was that I do also think that there's also a revolution kind of going on within the more spiritual community. There is known to be in a quote unquote like old guard type energy that exists of how things were done before. And as society as a whole is starting to come into their own and tapping into their own intuitive abilities, and there's more people that are becoming interested in it, there's starting to be a kind of a shakeup. I know that when I went through some psychic development in my early 20s, I had an instructor and who she would fall under that category of an old guard. And for her, it was very, very much about, I will tell you, Natasha, and this ties directly into what you're talking about, the financial side of it. A big part of it was make sure that you're charging at least this much. Make sure you're doing this. This is the business structure of how to do this. Because this is important so that you're not hurting other people within this quote unquote old guard energy. But now with the advent of YouTube and with the democratization of the internet, it's starting to open things up more. And I think that we're in the midst of a shift within that specific community as well.
Interesting.
That is interesting. I wonder, I think this might be maybe on the minds of those of us who are a little older than some of the young people. But I think, at least for millennials, I don't think they have a clear memory. There are always exceptions, but I don't think they have a clear memory of the concept of the age of Aquarius. This is the dawning of the... And, it's one thing to, lay that out there, but that was a real, the new age, the age of Aquarius, which was coming to fruition in the 21st
August
century.
1987. And the convergence.
Yeah, the harmonic convergence. Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And so people tend to forget about that. And I think that there was kind of an amorphous concept in people's consciousness, at least in pop culture. And they didn't really know what this new age was going to be, that we will all be more connected with each other, that it was somehow going to be a world that offered some more benefit or
rainbow
or
bunny
something
land,
that didn't. Right. Yeah. Well, not so much that, but what I'm saying is they were saying it's going to usher in something that we don't have now that's going to be brand new to us. And that sounds like a bunch of hooey, but look at us now with the internet and the democratization of this, that people from around the world can have Google Hangouts and talk to each other and have a show and talk, potentially to any number of people in their audience. Okay, is that not really truly a new age of technology and interactivity? On that level, it completely came to fruition. It happened. It's here. And this is the blossoming of that. Mm-hmm. And it's not really woo-woo. It doesn't really have anything to do with nation, but it has reached into every single person's life and changed their life irreparably. Things will never go back to the pre-digital age.
Mm-hmm. Can I say something? I really don't like the word woo-woo. Yes. It's an endearment from where I'm coming from. There is a concept of high strangeness. Mm-hmm. I would call it massive wonderment and speechlessness and breathlessness. And if I can find that, I'm a happy camper. Without that, I don't even want to be here. But I just had to say that because there is a way of eventually integrating where even I would like to think that somebody who is a complete skeptic and a possibly an atheist is still capable of that wonderment, because that's a human thing. that we all have. And when we're in that state, it's really hard to be angry or sad.
Right.
So that's kind of like my quest. And two things you were talking about, money and spirituality, Natasha, and this is a huge bugaboo with many people. Now, very interestingly, I heard, I think it was on Dark Journalist, was interviewing Catherine Austin Fitz, and she was answering someone's question about why does money have to, it's all around money or something to that effect. And she was very graceful and dignified. And she said, what's wrong with money? I happen to love money. It's what people do with money, how they feel about money. It's the energy that is thrown onto it. And one could call energy a woo component. But, there's unseen and seen. So when we have this, we recoil from the idea of something that is spiritual should be completely free of any concept of business. The ancient Egyptians were business adepts, and it was considered a high spiritual state if one had a child who was born who showed all the signs of being the merchant. It was a high state, So we have a lot to learn. So from where I'm coming from, I agree with Catherine Austin Fitz that it's not money. But on the other hand, I absolutely agree with you that it's become poisoned, toxic, like the power of the ring. I'll stop there, but I did want to speak to that.
No, I agree with you, Bibi, in that sense. I think that where the line kind of gets drawn is, are they doing it? Well, because I think that you have the right to basically make a living off of doing that, because you are doing a service, as we discussed with regards to are psychics real or not. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, I think that once it becomes solely about the finances and solely about the money, then at that point, then it crosses into something that it kind of ends up tainting it to a degree. And I think that might be what we're kind of discussing.
Qualities, corruption, lack of integrity. We want to get away from that. So this is great because we're pointing at where it exists in the community. So that's helping me get an answer to my question.
And
so many people. Oh, go ahead. No.
I just wanted to throw one more thing out there. Sorry, Natasha. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No.
You're
the guest, please.
I just wanted to say that it is actually also interesting for me because I would be considered an older millennial. I'm not gonna deny that fact, that I'm on the older end of the millennials, that I am a millennial. And for me, I did grow up with the internet. I actually grew up even younger with the internet just because, my father works in technology. So I had the internet way before other people did. And I basically learned how to program on DOS when I was a young child. So for me, looking at this, I look at it from a completely different point of view than a lot of people within this quote unquote community. I know that a lot of people are arguing about what a community is anyway. But for me, I think that ties into why I see things the way that I do and why I feel the way that I do about a lot of these things. That's all.
Oh, no, that's an excellent point. Going back to some of my personal experience, I was close to people who were into transcendental meditation, as in the Maharishi, as in the Beatles and the Maharishi. And, they had their place up in Iowa and they had their organization, all this. And as I got to know them, and I started to have, because I always flirted with meditation and different meditative schools of thought. Sahaj Marg, I practiced for a while. I've done Shambhala meditation. And I found out through knowing these people that just like Scientology, to go up in levels of transcendental meditation, you had to pay money. You had to pay money to advance to the next level. Mm-hmm. And, suddenly it's like the Maharishi's charging people money to spiritually advance, quote unquote, literally.
That's an ancient tradition. Old tradition. Sorry to interrupt you, but I mean,
No. How do we sort that out? Because that kind of transaction means one thing to us in our consumer-driven modern society, and it meant something completely different to someone in ancient times.
Carl Jung
years
said
ago.
You can't. I'm so sorry. I'm passionate about this. Carl Jung said you can't mix cultures in spirituality. I think that used to be true, but with the internet, with all of this melting coming together, we're just that much more aware. Also, I think Natasha and Kelly, we're moving away from the age of the guru. Mm-hmm. The one who is the middle person who stands in between our hearts and the divine. That's old fashioned now. I had a guru for many years. I was a meditation teacher for many years. I went the sacred path. It was very beneficial for me, but I can't do that anymore because the energy just doesn't go with what I'm feeling here. We're moving away from that. So I think that's great. Sorry, that was really rude of me, Natasha. I apologize.
No. That's the kind of interaction that I really want to encourage.
Oh,
especially
good.
If you have something right there, that's you're not stepping on my toes by doing that. Because it's pretty obvious that someone in ancient times, if they paid or gave some compensation to a guru, that actually just kind of measured their commitment to advance and to sticking with the system. And it had less to do with money because it was harder to get money or to get the goods or produce the services that one might exchange. That was more difficult to come by. So actually that commitment made a lot more. But now money is kind of easy, right? Like we work, and I mean, if theoretically, if you wanted to advance in transcendental meditation, you could take out a small loan or get an advance on your credit card and do it. You know what I mean? And there's no sacrifice involved.
The Wild West.
And getting an getting an advancement on your credit card, there's no sacrifice involved in that.
Right.
Virtually zero, just a little bit of your time. And so if you can pay the money in advance without some kind of real personal sacrifice, does that taint that process and change the meaning of that for the adept or for the
neophyte? I would think it does. I think even in the ancient magical systems, be very, very careful where you tread. Be impeccable and know what you are working with and what you are dealing with. And if you take a shortcut, beware, because taking a shortcut means that you're cutting off something that should have been there in the first place when you're dealing with a spiritual mechanism. I think these truths are just going to hold steady, and that may be a little too woo for some people to hear, but that is my understanding. So in answer to your question, Natasha, I think it harms the person who goes that route, in addition to harming other people that person is attempting to overpower, influence, con, really. It harms a lot of people. It's no good. It's got to go. It's poisonous.
Absolutely. I want to switch gears a little bit. It's almost 8:15, and we'll wrap the show by 8:30. Normally I go an hour, but this has been engaging, and I'm having a good time. So I will direct a little bit, and I'm going to bring up one more topic that you guys brought to the table. And after I introduce this topic and get Kelly started on this, I'm going to look through the live chat and cherry pick some questions, and we'll finish the show out with questions from the chat room. Okay. So I have to claim complete ignorance. One of the topics that Kelly put out was mentioning the 1999 nostalgia loop time travel experiment. And I've been really busy. And if that's something that someone talked about in a recent video or something, I don't know what it is. I don't know what that's referring to. So I have to plead ignorance on exactly what that is. But I still want to discuss it. And while you're getting that ball rolling, Kelly, I'm going to scroll through the chat room and see what's going on.
So Bibi knows what it is. Natasha, I can tell you this. Just check out CW's more recent videos. He's talking a lot about it because he's the one that's actually behind the time travel experiment. The nostalgia loop itself is something that does seem to be happening. And that's really just the idea that fashion, media, even sometimes, and a lot of times politics and things get repeated in set 20-year cycles. So right now it's 2019, so we're getting a lot of reflections from the late 90s. So, for example, the television show Charmed is actually a really good one. Somebody brought this up today. That premiered on the WB, if anybody remembers the WB, in 1998. The reboot of Charmed actually just started on the CW in 2018. So 20 years after it premiered, they've done a reboot. New Kids on the Block, even. The band started in 1984. They broke up after 10 years, but they started again almost a little bit over 20 years after they initially came together. In 2007, they started touring again, even though prior to that, they had said that they would not tour again. So it's things along those lines. For me, so onto the experiment. And that's where then I'll talk a little bit about what I'm doing with regards to it. So the experiment is something that CW's brought up. It's the idea that perhaps if we go back to things in 1999, the media, so we're talking about movies, television, music, and listen to exclusively those things from 1999, or if you want a little bit more flexibility, prior to 1999, but nothing after 1999, that there's a possibility that we could, in general, start to kind of blur the lines and possibly do some sort of time travel. So that's what this time travel experiment is. It's really a thought experiment. So for me, what I'm really looking at is I started watching, for example, I don't know if you remember this, Natasha and Bibi, but there was this soap opera that premiered July 5th, 1999, called Passions. And what it was, yeah, right? It's super dramatic. I watched it when it premiered. So I was 13. And I watched it religiously because it started in the summer. So I was able to watch it until I had to go back to school. And there were a lot of supernatural elements to it. For some reason, it just captivated me because a large portion of the cast were actually in high school. So I think that was a lot of draw. And actually, when they talk about the demographics for it, it was actually people between 12 and 17 were the largest people watching it. So it was actually that demographic that I fit into. So the even more fascinating thing is that someone recently started uploading the episodes from Passions onto YouTube just within the past few weeks. So that's allowed me, coincidentally, to now start watching it again. So that's what I'm doing to kind of play into this thought experiment. I'm also exclusively listening to music from 1999. So what do you think, Natasha?
That's an interesting concept. I like it. I like the idea of that. I don't know. I got distracted by the chat room.
That's okay.
I was looking. I was reading and listening at the same time.
That's
I
okay.
think it's a fascinating concept. And I'm not minimizing it at all. I got thrown by a question. The danger is I can always hang with these conversations as long as I don't look at the damn chat room. And like I can be right on there. I'm right in the groove with everybody and look at the chat room. And by the time I get sucked into there, because Alfie Solomons wrote something that I have absolutely no idea what he's asking. Natasha, how long is it taking for August 30th to get here? When will then be now? Well, I would, if it's the 13th and August 30th is coming, I think we can do the math. I don't know why the hell. And I shouldn't even be mentioning that. But that's one of the things, like, I'm looking for questions. But we got a lot of compliments and a lot of comments. But There aren't a lot of actual outright questions. So I'm going to embarrass myself right here in front of everyone. Just give me the rehash real quick of this concept, just real quick, and I'll pick up on it.
So the concept is that approximately every 20 years, give or take a few years, there's basically a rehashing of media, rehashing of fashion, which is very well known. A lot of people will acknowledge the fashion side of it. And, rehashing of even events. For example, here's another one, and this is kind of a crazy one. In 1999, there was a 7.1 earthquake in California in the desert. And then obviously, as all of us know, around the 4th of July, there was a 7.1 earthquake at China Lake. Both of them were on military bases. They were both centered near military bases. So it's just something that happens to be happening. So, and like I was also saying, if you want to know more about it, you should check out CW's been talking about it all this week. And because he's really the one behind the experiment. Yeah, so he's behind the experiment because the idea is that if you start looking at these things and start replaying them and watch exclusively the media, listen to exclusively the music, then there's the possibility of kind of blurring those lines and possibly creating things like Mandela effects, things like that.
Okay, I see. I get it. Okay, now I'm with you. And part of that, I guess I understood. I wanted clarification, and I want to make sure that I actually understood the concept. I kind of picked up on that when I was a kid because Happy Days and Laverne and Shirley were so popular, and that was the mid 70s. And so what was dominating television was things from the 50s and also MASH, which was huge. I don't know if younger people really realize how powerful MASH was on television. That was huge at the time. But, we were still, as a country, in pain from the Vietnam experience. But in some ways, they were relaying that Vietnam experience into homes through the premise of the Korean War. And the television series MASH lasted years longer than the Korean War did. The television series was on a lot longer, thank God. Then as we moved into the 80s, we saw that things in the 60s started to kind of come back, and fashions and things like that. And so I definitely think there's a cultural connection to that. I think sometimes that industry and marketing tends to kind of do that to play up on nostalgia. But I think that there is something to be said too for looking at that that kind of I guess maybe I would tend to think of it as a feedback loop of information or ways of thinking. And I really hope big hair from the 80s doesn't come back, but we're kind of past that 20-year mark for the big hair.
We're into the late 90s, luckily, at this point. So now we're into like really flat, straight hair, so it's the opposite.
Right. We're getting ready to get back into the beginning of skinny jeans.
Skinny jeans will never
No, they won't. I recently, just 2 days ago, watched the original Terminator movie. And I was looking at everyone's hair and everyone's clothes. And I was like, oh my God, there's like a club scene. And I was looking at the hair and the clothes and I was like, it is so ridiculous. Like everyone thought that was cool at the time. And it's like absolutely ridiculous. So yes, what I'm going to do is this. I'll go videos. I've not been watching anyone else's content this week. For 2 weeks. I've been like shut out in my own world. But I'll go revisit that and I'll participate and I'll get in on a chat on that. I think that's an interesting concept. And I think that we might even be seeing some of those echoes in our politics. I know that you're talking about overall on multiple levels, but I think our political system right now is kind of like screaming, the late 90s. That was just a little bit past the Bill Clinton scandal. And I'm really freaked out right now because I have a lot of friends that are into the QAnons. I've not been one of the people to invest anything in the QAnon subject. And, they're like, pedophile ring. And I'm like, come on, man, get off of it. And then like the news of the last week is like major pedophile ring, all these rich people. So, it's kind of like, on the one hand, I'm like, this QAnon stuff is crap. And then on the other hand, I'm like, wow, they really are like this has far-reaching implications in terms. Wow. That was fantastically bizarre. That I don't even know what I was saying anymore. That was that the American Werewolf in London? I'm pretty sure Rick
His name is
Baker
Kumi, and
coming
he's
down
a
the
Shih
escalator.
Tzu. He's that big.
Little tiny werewolf.
So yeah, I'm just I'm kind of running my yap on that. But Bibi, do you think that there are I'll just use the term feedback. But do you think there are feedback loops? Do you think we
Hell yeah.
repeat some of the same territory if there are lessons that need to be learned that didn't get learned the first time? Is that an element of this?
Absolutely. And, you brought up QAnon. So for somebody who grew up in the 50s and 60s, the QAnon movement is brilliant at getting to people my age because it taps into that hippie awareness of the Jefferson airplane doing wooden ships, that song. The sense of everything has gone to complete hell and it's up to us. And there's something beautiful and sacred here that we need to preserve. And this is the patriotic sense that I resonated with that. So I started reading, the QAnon stuff, and it was just too creepy. There was so much anti-Semitism, and I'm Jewish, and I'm not a practicing Jew, but I have Jewish blood, and it was so ugly. And I thought, if somebody is that wise, you're not going to see this. So that was a clue that this is not right. Okay. But yes, there's this sense of there was that overlap. I am feeling, since CW brought up the 20 years and the 1999, it was such a pivotal year for me. My father died, and I met my partner, Tom, and my just everything changed, and I became free to see how fucked up I have been in my life, and I started working on myself and things of this sort. But there are, for a sensitive person who puts your focus on listening for 1999, I've been hearing 99. I've been feeling 99. I've been drawing in memories. Now, I'm trained as an actress, so don't think that's really weird. I did that for years in order to prepare roles that I played. But it's very useful. 99 is alive in my world. Now, again, I can only speak from my own experience. I'm not a sociologist, and I can't look at trends and things of this nature. But I will bet you that if we could measure the currents of time that flow back and forth. I think one day we might be able to do that when we get super advanced, That would be fun. Be fun to be a scientist who does stuff like that. So
that would be amazing.
Wouldn't it be cool?
So as we taper off here into the last couple of minutes, I want to give each of you a chance to talk about what you're doing, your social media contacts, and what we can look forward to from you in the immediate future, and maybe even the long-range future. Kelly, what do you have going on?
So I've added back on a second night to my show because I had done it before and then I took it away and now I put it back. So now I'm on Tuesday nights and Friday nights still, 7 o'clock, 10 p.m. Eastern. So actually me and you, Natasha, combat on Fridays. But we've known that, so that's not anything new. But on Tuesdays, I do interviews with people. Like my first interview, once I added back the dates, was actually Bibi.
Right.
And I've had a few other people on. Have some guests coming on soon. For the majority of them, though, it's it's really people within the community itself that I really feel have some important things to say. And on Friday nights, I'm kind of keeping it more to my research-based things, such as with regards to philosophy, mythology, ancient civilizations, fun stuff like that. So
awesome. And social media links, where can we find you?
I'm on Twitter as Explaining Esoterica. I'm on Instagram. I have a Facebook page. All of them under Explaining Esoterica, so it makes it pretty easy. And then also there's my website, which is www.explainingesoterica.com. And obviously,
Which is awesome, by the way.
Oh, thank
you guys should check it out. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Bibi, what's going on with you? What do you have?
I am in that confluence of stuff that I love to do. So storytelling, photography, and writing. But what I really love to do is to connect with people. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say, I'm daring myself to get on my channel and just say, hey guys, I'm doing a live chat. I want to have a conversation. Nothing, I mean, this is like a big deal, what you're doing and what you do. I want to do a very casual thing as an experiment to pull me out of my shell. I'm not shy, but for some reason I just haven't gone there. And I need to do that because I have something to give in terms of my storytelling. And so I'm just putting it out there, and be on the lookout. There'll be a random, spontaneous tweet. I spend more time on Twitter than I do on Facebook or on Instagram. I had to stop and think. On Twitter, it's at Bibi Tinsley. Facebook is the Bibi blog. And also you can friend me, but I don't like Facebook anymore. It's I used to. Twitter is much friendlier. And my site, which is thebibiblog.com. And I do actually have a channel, and I want to do more with it. So that's it. Busy.
Awesome. Well, I would like to encourage everyone watching this or listening to it to hit both of these ladies' social media up and hit their YouTube channels and like and which that's time for the happy music for me. And I'm going to be at the International UFO Congress, September 4th through the 8th. That is the world's longest running UFO conference. And it's because it runs for 5 days. And I'm at booth number 6. And I'm going to have some pretty cool decor. I'm going to be conducting interviews in the booth. I'll do some roving reporter stuff. And please don't forget Disclosure Con in Pine Top, Arizona. That's a Doc Skinner production. That's a 1028 production. And this will be my second year at Disclosure Con, Pine Top, Arizona, first weekend of October. I'm going to start remembering those dates so I can say them. And that's where sci-fi and sci-reality collide under one roof at Disclosure Con. So International UFO Congress, come to Phoenix, October, Disclosure Con. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe and share this video. Thank you so much. Kelly, Bibi, thank you so much. You ladies are wonderful. And please come back. Let's do this again.
Thank you, Natasha.
Wonderful. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Natasha. Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Bye, everybody.